Hey guys, before we begin this episode, I want to make sure everyone knows that June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I am so grateful to have had Nikoma on to talk about his journey with mental health and why it is so important to keep the conversation around men's mental health going. Please be aware of a trigger warning on this episode of bullying, abuse, and suicide. What is up, pretty people? I'm Amanda Morrissey, and welcome back for another episode of Too Pretty to Be Unhappy. Hey guys, how's it going? I hope that everyone has had an amazing week, and I hope that you guys enjoyed last week's episode where I talked all about my trip to Greece, and I hope that all of you right now are planning your trip to Greece because it was incredible, and I want everybody to enjoy it. So this week, I am so excited. We have our very first, very special premiere male guest.
What? For the boys.
Yeah. Tuesdays are for the boys.
Tuesdays are for the boys. Oh, wait, it's Thursday. What's today?
Well, the episode releases on Tuesdays.
Tuesdays are for the boys.
Tuesdays are for the boys.
This week at least.
So I have my friend Nikoma Ortiz here with me.
Hello,
Hi,
everyone.
Nikoma.
Lovely followers.
I am so excited to have Nikoma, and for Nikoma to be my very first premiered male guest, I couldn't think of anyone better. So,
thanks.
Absolutely.
There could probably be someone.
No way.
But
No
I'm
way.
honestly honored to be here. Thank you. This is also outside of what we were just talking about, my podcast that I had tried to do a couple of years ago. This is the first time I've ever been on a podcast.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for choosing us.
It's a first for everyone.
We're so happy to have you here. So Nikoma, can you just give us a very quick, just kind of who you are, a little introduction, who you are, what you do?
Sure. I'll try to keep it quick. I'm
gonna
not good
try
at
a
short
lot.
stories. Very bad at short stories. I am 35. We can start with that.
Yep.
35. Just moved up to the Newburgh area. I also live in Montgomery. And I've been in the Hudson Valley, though, for 20 of those, we'll call it 21 years of those 35 years.
Cool.
Originally from Queens, New York.
Nice.
My family's from Brooklyn and Queens. I'm a professional photographer, I guess, right? I am at this point. I guess I can say I'm a professional.
Yes, and let me tell you, Nikoma's work is incredible.
Thank you.
So you do, and you have a wide array of photography that you do.
Some people would say that is my problem, but
No. And he's good at it all, guys.
yeah. So I mean, I do photo and video, but mainly photo. At least that's what I'm trying to focus in on. Even though the world is very much switching to video. Obviously, we're here doing this, so even radio needs video now.
Yep.
And yeah, photo has been my source of, well, I guess it started as my source of creative output.
Yep.
Now it's my full-time life.
Okay.
And I love portraits, landscapes, and street photos specifically, but yeah, I do it all. Like you said, anything I can get my hands on, especially when it comes to business needing to make money.
So before this episode, Nikoma and I met to kind of chat about what we wanted to talk about on the episode and such. So if you hear me referencing that conversation, that is what I'm talking about.
That 3-hour conversation.
Yeah, Nikoma and I met the other day at the Iron Cafe. Shout out Iron Cafe for 3. And it was like I blinked and 3 hours went by, and we
literally
were just chatting.
Walked outside and I was like, "Oh, what time is it?"
Oh my goodness!
Like, oh my God, it's 3 o'clock.
Yeah, how did that happen? All right, so Nikoma, I think that obviously the basis of this podcast is mostly talking about mental health, and I really wanted to have you on to get a male's perspective. We have had my perspective. We have had a few other friends that have, let us know about their story, which is incredible. But I am so interested to hear about, your perspective as a male with mental health, because I know too, as taboo as, quote unquote mental health can be in talking about it, it's even more so for men.
Yeah, there's
and it's
definitely
really difficult to talk about.
yeah, it's definitely. I mean, even today, where most people are still so much more open-minded than they were even 5 or 10 years ago,
Hmm.
as a general space for mental health, I think men still have a big stigma, and I think
Absolutely.
honestly, it's mostly men that do it to each other.
Okay.
Um, Obviously, there's also, the way that men perceive the way women feel about mental health for them, but we do it to ourselves a lot, because of the way that most men are kind of brought up to be. Especially if you were raised in the 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
early 2000s. I feel like now, thankfully, people are starting to raise their boys with the awareness that mental
Yeah.
health is important. Um, and it's a good step.
I
It's
agree.
a good step for everyone because if not we're, because I don't have, unfortunately, any kids yet, but if my friends and their friends and everybody who has kids is raising their boys to be um, more open with their feelings, and
Yeah.
it's okay to have emotions and
Absolutely.
all these things, then it affects the way that they approach women as
Yeah.
well, and then we create a good circle of
Yeah.
engagement.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I specifically have had a really rough go with my mental health
Yeah.
from a really young age. So I hope that we're, as a society in general, are heading in a good direction for boys, if we're speaking specifically on boys
Yeah.
and men, to be more open about their mental health struggle.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of that, I would love to kind of start at the beginning with you, and because I know that when we did speak, one thing that you have told me that really kind of helped shape who you are is you were raised by women,
Yeah,
a tribe of women,
a pack of
a
women, as I
pack
like
of
to put it.
women,
Yeah.
pack
Shout
of
out.
lionesses.
Yes, indeed. Shout out obviously to my mom and her friends, um, my aunt Debbie, my aunt Janine, and then a countless other, my aunt
Yeah.
Arlene, like all these people who, even the ones that had husbands and
Yeah.
whatever. Like, I didn't have a lot of good male influence growing up, so the women in my life felt more so that they had to be a bigger presence and
Yeah.
a better influence, especially my mom. So yeah, I was raised by all these really tough. Um, I don't know how else to explain it. Like, just really tough women. Like, both mentally and some of them physically, especially were my mom.
Yeah.
Very, very tough woman, both inside and out. The way she looks, the way she acts, the way,
Yeah.
but also soft and a warm heart. And obviously, like all humans, has her own
Yeah.
issues. But for the most part, the women in my life have just been extraordinarily great. My grandmother, even for as hard as she was, very hard woman. Yeah, I mean, we came from,
Tough.
yeah, very just, yeah, so tough,
Strong. Yeah.
strong and tough, and just like, life made her a little bitter, but she was a no BS type woman.
Yeah.
Like, and on my dad's side, my grandmother, although there was, if we want to call it a family structure, um, she was like again, a no BS woman. Like, there's a story of like my dad did something in his like 20s, and she like smacked the shit out of him. Like, and my dad's like 6'4", and
Yeah.
she's like 5'4".
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
That was the way, though.
yeah, that's it. So yeah, just all the women in my life have been very strong and very independent in a sense, even the ones
Yeah.
that had husbands and families. And
So, what are the characteristics that you would attribute to being raised by women of how you are now?
um hmm, well, there's a lot of things. I would say most of who I am is based on the things that I saw men do that I didn't want to be like, which is what we did talk
Yeah.
about that.
Can you give us some of those examples?
Um, I saw a lot of abuse in my life, early in my life, both physically and mentally. A lot of just angry uh, energy, you know,
Mhm.
um, and not to. I feel like I leaned away from those things because I was raised by all these women and having that extra, like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I like really leaned heavy into like being gentler. Like,
Okay.
I almost used the word soft. We talked about that.
Well,
The other
I
day.
know.
Yeah. I felt like
Used
you
the
were
word
waiting for it.
soft,
Yeah.
and I did not like that.
And just, I think I, you know, to pick out specific characteristics about me, I don't know off the top of my head.
Because I would say, and Nakoma and I haven't known each other too long, but I know personally whenever you come into the room or we see each other, it feels very, like you said, gentle, and it feels very safe.
Yeah.
And I think that's like an energy that you have that like you can't like teach it, you can't anything like that. And
Yeah.
I think just for, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth or anything, but I I can see, and we also talked about the fact that when I speak, I feel like you hear me and like you're actually listening. Like you have very good listening skills for like for women. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that probably does come directly from that. Definitely, I've definitely heard the feeling safe around me thing often.
Yeah.
Which is a great thing to hear
Yeah.
as a man. I mean, like I have three sisters, you know, raised by a single mom up until I was like 10, essentially. And so to hear that has translated into the way women feel around me, just in a general sense, like when I walk in the room, even I mean, in a sense, every man wants to kind of walk into a room and be noticed by women, right? But like, we usually do it in a way that's like, how can I get her attention by
It's
being
usually
loud? Right. By being loud, even if it's an energy sense, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's, I walk in the room and I puff my chest and like, or
Right.
I'm the loudest guy by being the funniest or whatever. And I feel like I've gained so much more attention by just almost, I don't want to say being quiet. I'm not a quiet person.
No.
If you've ever seen me out
Yeah.
in public, you know that I am
Yeah.
not a quiet person by any means. But in the proper space, I feel like letting people know without having to say it that you're a safe energy, that
Yeah.
you can be approached,
Yeah.
whether you're a male or a female, is good. And I am approached by just as many men, I feel like, as I
Yeah.
am by women, which I think is great. I've always kind of tried to be the guy that like women, you know, want, but
Right.
also are safe around,
Right.
but also the ones that men like, because a lot of times that doesn't translate either.
Right. It can be, you don't want it like as far as like a threat.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I want to be friends with everybody. I'm so social. Like
Right.
I walk into a room and I'm like, how many friends can I make tonight?
And
Like
you're usually already friends with half of them. So.
yeah.
You're like, actually, I can only make 50% new friends tonight.
But yeah, being so sort of exposed to a lot of seeing women go through a lot of bad things early in my life has made me very cognizant of how I approach women. And listen, and we said this in our conversation, like I make mistakes still. I'm still a man. I've still hurt people's feelings. I've still done things I shouldn't have done. I've still broken people's hearts. I've still done all the dumb man things.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between like making those mistakes because you're young and you've been here going through the motions of growing as a man with, I'll give myself a little credit. I had no influence outside of like, hey, I probably shouldn't do all these bad things. There was no like raise me to be a good man outside of what my mom wanted me to be, which is a very different dynamic.
Yeah. Now I want to touch on that because, so obviously you raised single mom, so your dad wasn't in the picture. Was he ever in the picture? Do you have a memory of that, or was was that like some of the abuse that you have seen that you talk about from the past?
Most of the kind of abuse that I've seen has never been like severe. It's been like a shove or throwing something.
So
or
physically
like,
severe.
Right. It hasn't been physically severe, right? Not to the point where I've like, seen anybody like have my mother in a corner and beating her,
Right,
like
right,
in that sense. Not that any kind of abuse is ever okay, but like there are levels to it, and I don't want to feel anybody to feel like I'm trying to put it on like I had this like crazy level of abuse in my life. Um, but any level of abuse is bad, especially growing up to see a man treat your mother like that. Um, so I'll early on, I think a lot of the abuse was seeing my mother upset in the things that men did to her because I didn't see it very early on. Obviously, she dated from the time my mom and dad split till I was like 10 when she started seeing my sister's dad.
And when did your mom and your dad split? How old were you?
I think like a year or two old.
Oh, okay. So you baby.
I was a baby. Yeah.
You were a baby.
I have like
okay.
almost no memory of them being together.
Okay.
I don't have a memory of them actually being together, but I know there's like little flashes in there.
Yep.
Like living somewhere together.
Yeah.
But he wasn't completely absent. He was more distant.
Yeah.
I guess is an okay word to use.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was present, it was wasn't a good bond.
Got it.
And that's not to discredit the person he is now. Just kind of then.
Yeah. He wasn't like the showing up dad taking you to baseball games
no,
and like.
And that was my sister's dad for a long time, which we also got into. There was a whole mess of problems there.
Yeah.
But as far as my dad, me and my dad, I don't have many memories of my dad as a kid. Like hanging out with him. The ones that I do have are like hanging out in his apartment and either he's sleeping all day and I'm watching movies, or maybe I have a couple memories of like riding with him. He rides and builds motorcycles. But no real father-son bonding. Not in the way that me and my mom bonded, where we always did things together. And she showed up to all the sports games, took me to karate, did all the things you're supposed to do as a parent.
Yeah.
So, and then later on, my mom started dating who's now my sister's dad. My sister was born when I was 11. He was a good dad.
To you or to your sister?
All right, so yeah, there's all that. I mean, he was not great to me in the early stages he didn't know how to handle a kid first of all, he was in his 20s, did not probably want to date somebody with a child, but liked my mom. So you accept these things, I guess. Like you should know early on, if you want to be involved or not. Yeah. And so he was kind of emotionally abusive to me.
Can you give me do you mind like diving deeper into that and
just
giving us some examples of that? Because I know we talked a little bit about it.
Just like, so we did talk about it, and I just want to add that when you come from an abusive family, the only thing you know how to do is apply that.
It's
unless you do
from generation to generation.
Right, exactly. Unless you somehow do what my brain did, which was like, I don't want to be any of that.
Yeah.
And I think it mostly comes from like fear, almost, of like becoming that.
Can you tell us the story of the first day that you met him, the first time you met him?
So he used to make fun of me a lot, about the way I looked, and it came from a place of like, this is what I said to you also in the other conversation, where he thought if he beat me down, that he could build me back up. So that was his only way of saying, like, this is how you build a man, because that's how he was brought up. Except that I was a kid that had no recollection of what a father is like. So it's like almost like he had a clean slate. He could have done anything. So
it's like he chose to bully you.
Right, exactly. And so yeah, the first day, he came over to meet me. I'm sure my mom and him had been dating a while at this point, but I'm sitting in the living room and I'm playing. I can, like, I told you this too. I was like, I can remember like full details. I'm sitting in my living room. The hallway is like behind me. You like come in down the hallway and then come into the right into the living room. And and I loved wrestling, so I had all these wrestling dolls and like the ring and like all the toys, and I had them all laid out. And I'm playing with him or whatever, and he came in and and I was like excited, and I was like, hey, and I said hello, and like he was like, hey buddy, what's up? And I was like, do you want to play with me? And he said, no, I don't play with dolls, and he just like walked in the other room. And that was my first experience with a man who would then come to be my sister's dad later on. Basically raised me into my 20s. And that was my first experience with this man. And so, if you can base it off just that, you can imagine how progressively it might have gotten worse. We did get close at one point in probably my teen years. But he has a lot of his own issues, and makes a lot of poor decisions with his life, and so our relationship has been very strained since, for basically my entire relationship with him. So,
which is so wild, and it really does kind of go to show how, like you said, like some dads take that route of kind of like beating their sons down, and like, you can't play with dolls, you can't show any type of sensitivity, you can't show any type of feminism, or you know what I mean. And
yeah,
and it's interesting because some people now would say that like boys who play with dolls grow up to become good fathers,
right.
and
It's like green flag.
and
Yeah.
it's like green flag, yeah.
Right.
But it's so interesting, especially too in that time, how that was not even a thought.
No, and
Like, that was like so taboo.
yeah, I, if you haven't gathered yet, I like from the time I was little was kind of soft and gentle and like this,
Not soft.
Okay, not soft. I don't know what else.
Sensitive.
I don't know. Sensitive. Well, it's sensitive. I guess that's better. I don't know if that's better for our male viewers out here. Does sensitive feel better? Yeah. I don't think any of them feel good to the male ego, and but it's true. It's okay to be sensitive and soft.
Yeah.
If it's matched with your masculinity.
Right.
And I think in my life, that's where I've gotten a lot of this like bullying in my life, is that because I'm initially off the bat very soft, people think it takes away from me being masculine, or like, I don't. There's never been a day in my life where I didn't feel like a man.
Yeah.
Out for what I feel for me.
Right.
I'm sure there are people who look at me and I'm like, that's not a man, because of my stature and my size and the way I dress and the fact that I like to dance and sing and I'm a photographer. I'm a million reasons,
Which is so dumb.
Very dumb. Very dumb.
Very dumb.
Yeah. So I think, but I guess going back to what is attributed to who I am now, all of that experience has made me lean more into being me, I think. And like, I didn't realize that until later.
Yeah.
Probably later in my 20s, even like early 30s.
So I know that when we talked, you kind of said how almost like your first experience with bullying was from your stepdad. But then you had also mentioned that you were, like bullied through school.
Yeah.
How has that affected you? What were you bullied about? Like, can you give us any examples?
Literally everything.
Okay.
I actually, I don't know if I said it, and maybe you put it wrong. My first experience with bullying was definitely in school.
Okay.
I think my first experience, as far as like, I don't think I ever had an adult treat me like that.
Yeah.
And maybe that was what I was referencing when I talked, but definitely in school was my first.
Okay, like elementary school.
Like immediately.
Wow.
Like probably first grade.
Yeah.
And I had weird teeth. I had a weird funny smile. Like, my teeth were all messed up.
Really?
Yeah, I had braces, so
Me too.
they're straight-ish now.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I had big dopey ears, and
I think they're big.
well, they're maybe not now because they're growing in my giant friggin' head. But yeah, no, I was for being small, because I'm not a tall person. I'm only 5'9" now, so I was a small boy,
Yeah.
and skinny. So, and I feel like, in comparison to the to women's world and like the female perspective, men who are smaller are treated the same way I feel like women who feel that they're bigger are treated in prospective worlds. You know, if you're a smaller, skinnier boy, you're picked on just because you're skinny and because what are you gonna do? You know, like you're not gonna do anything because if you do, you're probably gonna get hurt. And like, there's plenty of skinny kids out there who are really tough. Like, just don't take no BS. You know, like, am I even allowed to curse on here?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, fuck all that.
And fuck you guys for bullying Nikoma. Come see me now.
So yeah, I just, you know, I was picked on a lot. I mean, I went to some, they weren't like the worst schools, but like tougher schools. I grew up in Queens, so you know, and I also grew up in a time where you were allowed, the second I was old enough to like take care of myself, I was allowed to hang out on my block and hang out with kids and like unparented, by the way.
No supervision.
No supervision. We were just outside doing whatever we were doing. We just knew don't leave the block, you know, like I got beat up every day of my life.
That's
like,
wild.
I think if we're gonna take a positive out of it, I'm not afraid to get beat up now. Like, I mean, like,
got that tough skin.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to get beat up. I don't want to fight. I don't like to fight, but like, I'm also not afraid to fight. You know, which is funny because my whole family, they're all like the roughest, toughest people I've ever met in my life.
Really?
Like, truly the toughest people I've ever met in my life.
Wow.
I mean, down to my grandparents, my mother. I mean, just
they don't take no shit.
No shit taken, and not even so. Like, just to give you an example, like my mother was an amateur boxer, still trains in jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai now.
Sick.
My dad was an amateur boxer and just a rough, like always getting into bar fights type of dude. My grandfather was a professional boxer and was a heavyweight champion in Puerto Rico for however long. I saw his record, not very good, but he was a champion, still held the belt for a while. So I just, and as far as I can tell, almost every person in my family is like a fighter, like a reactive, strong, aggressive fighter type person, and I'm just like, hey man, can we talk about this first? Yeah, like,
let's use our words.
Use our words, and if you say I'm a dick again, I'm gonna punch you. You know, like
then
I give you at least, you know, like I mean, I'm joking, but you get what I mean. It's like there, I have a line, but like, you know, for the most part, I'm. It takes a lot for me to cross that line. Yeah. Because I don't like the person that comes out when I become.
Absolutely.
And I think it comes from knowing that stems from family, and being like, I never wanted to be that person, and if you're gonna make me be that person, it's gonna make me angry at myself. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, it's kind of been crazy that since I'm so young, and you would think the bullying and like all of these things would have made me a hard person. Like, I think I was angry for a long time, maybe in my teens and 20s, early 20s, but still never aggressive, really, never like outwardly aggressive towards other people unless there was a reason to be. But yeah, the bullying, I mean, I was getting beat up all the time. I did karate. I did all the things. My parents, you know, had me doing karate, and I did boxing on and off from a young age through my teens into my 20s, even probably up until a few years ago. I was like going in and out of gyms. But yeah, I don't know what it was about me, and still now kind of I touched on this too. I was like, you know, even in my friends group, even though my type boys, shout out to the 845 family, even in our group, even though we all kind of like bully and beat up on each other, because that's just, you know, what you do in your boys group. I'm the easiest to pick on by far because I'm a little more reactive. I think I just take things a little harder than most people. Probably stemming from, you know, being bullied my whole life. Because there's so many times we'll be in a full out conversation, like picking on each other. And somebody will do that one little thing.
That one.
Jesse, it's always you.
Oh, Jesse called out here on Too Pretty.
That's okay. He knows I love him. and then I'll say something and all the boys will be like, bro, like, you're all right, dude. Like, I'm like,
Relax. It's
yeah, like,
okay.
we're just, and I'm like, all right, you're right, my bad,
Sorry.
um
But no, I'm sure that it does kind of like you hit a like a sore spot.
you're the closest people to you, your family, your friends will always know where your sore spots are.
Yeah.
And which is unfortunate, but also necessary, I think.
Yeah.
Because that's how you let people in, is letting them know
Yeah.
where your sore spots are, and
Yeah.
But my friends will tell you also, they're like, we can talk to him like that, but nobody else is talking to him like
Oh,
that.
hell
Like,
yeah.
so they're good friends. They're not.
Yes.
I don't want to make it seem like there are people who can
No,
be like,
they're
hey, get new friends.
yeah, no, they're your ride or dies.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been. I don't know. I still don't understand at what point in my life as a kid or teen or whenever it happened that my brain was like, no matter what, no matter how other people are really treating me, no matter. And I guess it also comes from being my size, like being like, what am I really gonna do? Like, I'm not gonna beat up everybody I come across, or I'm not gonna try to, or I'm probably
Yeah.
gonna get beat up. You know, at whatever point I just decided like I'm gonna go the opposite direction. I just became like a friendly, social, um, safe space to be
Yeah.
around. And like I said, even for guys, there's so many people who are unsuspectingly have would or have messaged me that are men, meeting me in at a show or something,
Mhm.
and being like, dude, like you don't realize like that one post you made that one time about talking about mental health, like,
Yeah.
was a huge difference to me. Or just talking about it in general on a platform where people see that you're being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Um, so
Because it's not easy.
it's not, no, it's not,
It's not easy to
and
be
even
vulnerable and put your life out there on the internet and
I still get, I feel like I still get a little bit of, I don't want to say hate for it because that's making it seem like I get more attention than it deserves, I guess, but I feel like I get this weird energy from some people. Like, why would you put that on a place where you're supposed to be trying to build brand and business? And it's like, because I want people to connect with me, even if it's not just through my art and
I know.
having to hire me. And I mean, if you're building a brand nowadays, that's the route you should be taking anyway.
I I I agree. And it's also like you're human
Right. I'm a
and
human.
you want and you have feelings and they're not always great. I know that we all just
Not
want to
even
be
most of the time.
nope. I know that we all want to be happy all the time and that's like what the world is like, has
Trying to
we've always
push.
trying to
Yeah.
push like you're supposed
Yeah.
to be happy all the time and like that's the whole purpose of this whole podcast.
Yeah.
Is that like guys, we're not happy all the time. Okay,
Not,
let's be
yeah.
real.
Life is not just every day. Like,
Yeah.
you can choose to wake up every day and have a smile and say, no matter what
Have a
happens
positive
today,
attitude.
I'm going to go into the day being okay with whatever happens to me today. And how you react to your day will decide your outcome for how the day was.
Yeah.
But there's been so many days where I woke up in a fine mood and I'm going to go into the day, have a great day. And then, like, something happens and then another thing happens and another thing. Like, to think that every day is just going to be awesome, and that as, especially, as creators on a platform, whether you're a photographer, a podcaster, or an artist, whatever it is, that we should just share our positive good days. Like, that's crazy to me.
That's
Like,
so
that's how we got to where we are now, where people think everybody's a robot because,
me and Jocelyn and we call it toxic positivity.
yeah, it's terrible.
There's such a thing as toxic positivity.
100%.
And it's like, and how people have said to you, aren't you trying to build a brand? Aren't you trying to build your brand is you.
My brand is me, right?
So like by you not being vulnerable and honest, you're not being yourself. And
Right.
you're lying to everyone. It's like, no, like
Yeah.
the honest and true me, and that's with this podcast. The honest and true me is that I'm not always happy. I'm not always this happy-go-lucky person that people might think, and it's like, and that's okay because there's probably a lot of people that aren't
Right.
those happy-go-lucky people like we think.
And, like, I would even argue like most people
Agreed.
are just unwilling to show themselves in a vulnerable light. Even like, I don't do it that often. Maybe once or twice a month I
Yeah.
touch on how I'm feeling that day.
Yeah.
And I do it through a post, and it's a good way for me to connect with people. It's a good way for me to get it out.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
It's therapeutic.
It's therapeutic in a sense, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think there's a line where people use it too much.
Yes.
If I see that every day you're posting about how terrible life is, and like,
Okay.
I'm gonna reach out and be like, maybe get therapy,
Yeah, yeah,
and then
yeah,
not in
yeah.
a funny sense, but like
No,
actually,
yeah.
like, this is not a good space for you to every day be pouring your, um, I don't want to say negative energy, but it is kind of like this negative energy where, like, if you're every day you're doing that, of course nobody wants to follow you, and because everybody's got their own things going on every day. So when you do it in a way that's authentic to that day, hey, today I'm not feeling great.
Yeah.
Um, then I think it's okay.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm a little biased because I do that and like I said, I think there's a line. So there's gotta, you just gotta kind of feel it out, and like you also feel out your following for things like that.
Yeah.
When it comes to specifically social media, and like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I've gotten a lot of shit over the years for being open about how I'm feeling specifically on that day, that week, whatever, that month. And people have been like, "You're gonna lose business because of it," and it took a long time for me to realize, like, if somebody stops following me because they saw I had a bad day or I'm having a bad month and I wanted to talk about it, or they won't hire me because of that, later. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that I'll be okay. Somebody else will hire me. And honestly, no matter what level you're at, specifically talking to photographers and videographers, if somebody tries to tell you they don't want to hire you for something like that specifically, somebody else will hire you.
Yeah. See ya.
Don't be worried about things like that. You don't have to do every job just because you feel like you need to make that extra $100 from a person who's probably not going to be as appreciative of whatever you do for them.
Yeah,
that's what I'll say about that.
And their representation of your work. So.
Right, and yeah, exactly. But yeah, be a human.
Yeah.
Like
I want to chat a little bit, more obviously on like kind of your mental health journey, because when we chatted, you said in your teens and 20s, you even said like you didn't really, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I have it in my notes and I just saw it. So that you didn't really like yourself in your teens and your 20s, and then
I would still say 30 now, like
like it, but like
I've definitely had a headspace turnaround.
I've had a headspace turnaround as well in my 30s. But what was that like? Where was your head at, and where was your mental health in your teens and your 20s?
I would say honestly, my struggle with mental health started even before my teens. Like I said, I was bullied, as a very young kid. Even my close friends weren't always super nice to me. I did have a select group of friends who were, they were my friend. I was always good at making friends. Who I chose to be my friend wasn't always the right choice, but I would say most of my experience with my friends younger was good. And then, but when it was bad, when I got bullied, it was bad.
Yeah.
So it started young for me. I mean, we talked about this. My first threat for suicide I was in 3rd grade, which is, heartbreaking to even say.
Yeah.
Because I feel for, how old are you in 3rd grade? 7, 8?
8 or 9.
I was young. I was always young for my grade, so I was probably 8, something like that. I remember my teacher looked at me like, "What did you just say?" Like, blown away, kind of, that like I literally said out loud, like, I don't want to be alive anymore.
As we wrap up part 1 of this episode with Nikoma, I want to take some time to relay information regarding trusted mental health resources. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK, or the crisis text line. Text HOME to 741-741. For more information on mental health resources, please visit nowmattersnow.org. Tune in next Tuesday for part 2 of this episode.